Hi friends, I'm back again with another topic. This is a very confusing one, so I have divided it into subtopics. So what I'm going to talk about today is a small portion of disorders of sexual development. This is a question that you will often face, at least one question in every exam because it is such a confusing topic and examiners love to get a rise out of you with this. So because it is such a huge topic, what I'm trying to do over here is I am going to divide it, and today, I am going to talk about a male child, as in an XY child, who is presenting as a female at puberty with amenorrhea. Right, this is a clinical scenario that will often be given to you. So there are multiple entities, SWIRES, AIS, we don't know what all that is. So this is just an attempt to make all of that easier so that you know what you're dealing with when you read the question. Right, so before we get there, a little bit about the embryology. So this is what it looks like in the embryo. So before, at the beginning, whether the child is XX or XY, there is a potential that this embryo can form either the male organs or the female organs. So the male organs will be derived from the Wolffian duct, which is this one, and the female organs will be derived from the Mullerian duct. Right. So we know for a male to develop normally, the Mullerian duct has to go away and the Wolffian duct has to further develop into internal male organs. And these are the gonads. So what happens is in the body, the default mode is if there are no external stimuli, then the body is going to turn out, it's going to develop the Mullerian duct. So if we need this male to form normally, we need some external stimuli. And who provides that external stimuli is this Y chromosome. So this Y chromosome on its short arm, it has a gene called the SRY gene. What this SRY gene does is very important. It encodes for a protein called SOX9 proteins. What this SOX9 protein does is it causes the formation or basically the differentiation of this gonad into the male gonad, which is the testes. Now we know that the testes has two cell lines. It has one cell line is Sertoli cells and the other is the Leydig cells, right? So what the Sertoli cell does is something very important. Again, coming back to this diagram, we need the Mullerian duct to go away and the Wolffian duct to differentiate into male internal organs. So for the Mullerian duct to go away, what the Sertoli cell does is it secretes a hormone called AMH, or anti-Mullerian hormone. So this anti-Mullerian hormone, as the name suggests, is causing the regression of the Mullerian ducts. So one part of the problem is taken care of. The Mullerian ducts have gone away. So the female internal genitalia, like fallopian tubes, like the uterus, the vagina, they are not going to form, right? But now we need the Wolffian duct to develop into the male internal genitalia like the epididymis, vas deferens. So how that happens is, again, under the expression of SOX9, the Leydig cell secretes testosterone. And this testosterone, it forms the male internal genitalia. And again, within the cell, under the effect of an enzyme called 5-alpha reductase, this testosterone is converted to dihydrotestosterone. And what this does is, this leads to formation of male external genitalia, like the penis and scrotum. This will lead to formation of the epididymis, vas deferens, seminal vesicles. Right. So now we know this is how the male organs are being formed. So a problem in this flowchart at any level can cause this male to not present the way a male child should. Either there'll be defective internal or external genitalia, or there will be the female genital tract still intact. So we can see over here what are the levels in which this problem can occur. So one problem is at the level of the testes, that the testes does not have cells that are functional. For example, there's a problem in the Sertoli cells and Leydig cells. The other problem that can occur is that either your testosterone or DHT are not being secreted, or there is a problem in their action. So depending on that, we might have different clinical scenario. Now coming to what are the clinical scenarios that can be given to you. So typically in the question, you will have history and you will have examination. So the history will typically be, there's a girl who has presented with primary amenorrhea, right? She does not have periods. She is presented with primary amenorrhea, right? And when you examine the patients, there'll be a lot of different things. You will have to look at the secondary sexual characters. You'll have to look at the external genitalia. But one hint that they're definitely going to give to you in the question is something that hints that this is an XY. And this XY means there is formation of testes. So right away in the question, either they will give you that this child is XY, or they will tell you that on imaging, you found testes. Or more importantly, on examination, sometimes to fool you, they might give you something like labial swellings. So typically in a male, because of the formation of the scrotum, the testes is able to descend down the inguinal canal. But because in females that space is not available, the testes, if the external genitalia is female, because this child is being reared as a female, if the external genitalia is female, the testes are going to get stuck at the inguinal canal, and this is going to present as labial swellings. So this is typically the case scenario that will be given to you. Now coming to the different disorders that we may have. So firstly, we talked about the testes being defective. So this is a condition called pure gonadal dysgenesis. And the other name for this is Swyer syndrome. Again, a quick recap into the flowchart that we looked at. So if the testes is not working, the Sertoli cells are not working and the Leydig cells are not working. So the Sertoli cells we know produce AMH. So if there is no AMH, there will be no regression of the female genitalia. So if there is no AMH, the uterus, fallopian tubes and vagina will develop, right? And if there is no Leydig cells, that means there will be no testosterone and there will be no DHT, right? Which means there will be no male external genitalia, external or internal genitalia. So typically the question scenario in this will be girl with primary amenorrhea who is XY or has testes or has labial swellings comes to you and they will give you the imaging and they will tell you the uterus, fallopian tube and vagina are present. So this will mean it is Swyer syndrome. Right. And what do we do in Swyer syndrome? So typically this child is being raised as a female. Her internal genitalia, barring the testes, is also female. So usually they prefer to, spend the rest of their life also identifying as a female. So in this case, what needs to be done is, the first thing, whenever you find ectopic testes, you have to do a gonadectomy because there is chances of formation of a tumor. So you will do a gonadectomy as soon as it is discovered. And the other thing that you will do is, you will give exogenous hormones like estrogen and progesterones for development of the secondary sexual characteristics. And when we talk about the reproductive potential of this child, once she grows up, she has a uterus in place, but she has no ovaries. So for childbearing, what she can go for is IVF with donor oocytes because she has a uterus. Right? So this is Swyer syndrome. So this was our case scenario 1 in which the testes is defective. Now coming to the second scenario in which there is a problem with the androgens, right? So the second scenario, there is a problem with androgens. So there can be either a problem with androgen synthesis or there can be a problem with androgen function. So let's just talk about androgen synthesis first. So the first thing And the most common thing that they might ask you is 5-alpha reductase deficiency. 5-alpha reductase deficiency, and we know 5-alpha reductase was converting your testosterone into dihydrotestosterone. So testosterone is present, but dihydrotestosterone is absent. So usually these children will present with ambiguous genitalia and are assigned as female, assigned at birth as female, right? But in a very rare subset of these will present typically with just external genitalia of female. There will be no ambiguous genitalia, and what will happen is that they will have, because testosterone is present, they will have male internal genitalia but female external genitalia. And obviously, because the Sertoli cells are working, there will be no uterus, no fallopian tube, and no vagina. Right? So this is typically the scenario that will be given to you, that this child had, some ambiguous genitalia at birth but was raised as female and now has primary amenorrhea, right? And, on imaging, they have male internal genitalia, but the external genitalia are female. So this is a scenario that will be given to you, but this is very rare. So I do not count on this coming as a question anytime soon. And the third thing that you might have is defect in androgen function. So defect in androgen function, and this comes the most commonly, there comes the most commonly asked question. One, AIS, or androgen insensitivity syndrome. Androgen insensitivity syndrome. So what is happening over here is that your testosterone is forming, your DHT is forming, but your tissues in the body are not responding to the testosterone and DHT. Now, due to this lack of a negative feedback, the LH levels will be raised. So typically what will happen is, the AMH is intact because the Sertoli cells are intact. So what will happen is this will present as a female, who's typically tall, and, they will have female external genitalia. Why? Because the DHT is present, but it is unable to act on the cells that make external genitalia. And they will not have male internal genitalia because, again, the testosterone is not able to act. They will also not have any Mullerian duct features. So typically, they will just have a testes. So they will just present with a labial swelling. And because they don't have DHT, which is responsible for virilization, they will also not have axillary or pubic hair. But due to this testosterone, there will be some aromatization in the adipose to estrogen, and breast tissue will form. So typically, this will be a person with normal secondary sexual characteristics with regards to breast, but there will be no axillary or pubic hair. There will be labial swellings, and there will be female external genitalia. This is AIS, and if I am more specific, this will be complete androgen insensitivity syndrome, right? So we have something which is called an incomplete AIS, which is actually a spectrum depending on how much insensitivity is there. So because there is some sensitivity to DHT, there may be varying levels of virilization. And this virilization, in addition to the previous phenotype, can lead to clitoromegaly. So AIS is often asked in a question and pitted against MRKH or Mullerian agenesis. So what will happen in Mullerian agenesis is that in this also you will not have any internal female genitalia. Even in AIS, you will not have any internal female genitalia. However, there will be presence of pubic and axillary hair in Mullerian agenesis, but it will be absent in complete AIS, right? So what will happen in this, if we look at the management, again, because there are testes, we'll have to remove them. We'll do a gonadectomy. But because testosterone is helping with the height and the growth, we are not going to do the gonadectomy straight away. We will do the gonadectomy after puberty. We will do the gonadectomy after puberty, right? And because she does not have any uterus and she also does not have any ovaries, if we talk about the reproductive potential, she will have to go for adoption. But what we can do for this patient is that we can do a vaginoplasty, create a vagina so that she has at least some sexual function, right? So coming to the next and the last, which is defect in androgen function, and this is called LH receptor defect. LH receptor defect. So what happens in LH receptor defect is we know that SOX9 is helping the Leydig cells to secrete testosterone in the beginning, but later on luteinizing hormone from the fetal pituitary is taking over. So it is when this LH acts on this LH receptor and it stimulates the Leydig cells to secrete testosterone and dihydrotestosterone, right? But if this receptor is defective, then what is going to happen is eventually these Leydig cells will atrophy and there will be no testosterone and dihydrotestosterone, right? So there'll be no testosterone and dihydrotestosterone. So typically what will happen in this is, again, because AMH is functioning, AMH is there because the Sertoli cells are functioning, so there will be no female internal genitalia. So on imaging, on ultrasound, no uterus, no tubes, no vagina, right? And there will be a labial swelling which suggests that there is testes. But what is going to happen is, because there is no testosterone, no male internal genitalia, and because there is no DHT, there will be no male external genitalia. So I want you to take a moment and contrast this with androgen insensitivity, in which the testosterone levels were actually high. They were high or normal, but it is just that they were not able to act on the tissue. Right, so this testosterone, this extra testosterone was able to go to the adipose and get aromatized to estrogen, which was leading to breast development. But what is happening over here is the testosterone is not at all present. Because this testosterone is not present, there is no estrogen and therefore there is no breast development. So at puberty, they will present with not just amenorrhea and these features, they will also present with sexual infantilism, which means there will be no breast development. So this is LH receptor defect.